Hi, everyone. Welcome to the GoldFish Report. I'm your host, Louisa. Today is Tuesday, September 24th, 2019, and it's our GoldFish Report number 391. And joining me on this report is our YouTuber friend from Australia, who's down in Australia, actually, Tim Emslie. Welcome, Tim. Thanks for joining me tonight.
You're welcome. It's really good to be back talking to you again in
We
such an
always
auspicious time. It's so exciting.
It is, and since we do appreciate you joining us from Australia. It's already the next day there, and it's a little late here. So we are both kind of. You had to get up early, I had to stay up late. So we always do what we can to try to work out these international reports. So you're standing in front of an interesting building. Do you want to explain to our viewers where you are and what that represents there, so they can learn a little something about Australia?
Yeah, so this is a historic building. I don't know when it was made. I didn't read about it to remember the information, but it's an old hospital that got burnt down. And this is the front. This is what's left of the front of the building. And I mean, it's nothing like you'd find in England or Europe for the age, but it's still an interesting backdrop. And I thought, everyone always says that I do videos in interesting places, and that means a lot to people. And so I've
Yeah,
made the effort to
nice.
drive you just to have a background. It's like a bucket list of all the different places you can have a background for your videos. So that's
It's
part of
very
the
nice.
thing. Yes.
And
So
and if people are wondering why Tim has a tissue wrapped around his microphone, it's just because of the wind. It's very windy where you are, Tim. So we figured that would be a little, buffer to the wind.
strange.
Yeah. So Tim's not injured or anything. It's not like a big bandage, a tourniquet for his neck or anything. It's just his microphone. So this is all that's left. And what part of Australia are you in, Tim?
So I'm in Victoria. It's a little town called Beechworth, which is a touristy town. It's very historic. It has a lot of mine shafts around it. It has a Celtic festival once a year. So it's one of these little places where people like to go for a drive to get out of a modern urbanized city and go and have a coffee and go for a walk and have a look around all the interesting little shops. And there's a famous bakery here called the Beechworth Bakery, which is internationally renowned, actually. And it has other bakeries in other parts of Australia now because it's grown that big. But everyone remembers them for the bee sting, which is like this custard sort of, it's like a bread custard sort of, it's like a pastry bread with a custard with another thing. So it's like a custard hamburger with almonds on the top, and they call it a bee sting. I don't know
Oh,
why it's called a bee sting, but
interesting.
yeah, you probably don't have anything like that over there, or maybe you know about it, but mm.
Well, Tim, happy spring equinox. We just celebrated. You're down in the southern hemisphere in Australia, and so you're just welcoming in spring. We're just welcoming in autumn up here in the northern hemisphere in the New York area. And of course, you know that our presidents of our countries, respective countries, just had a lovely few days at the White House, had a lovely state dinner, had bilateral meetings. Is that all the news that's going on over there right now?
Well, I have seen what's going on a TV because someone, not that I watch TV, but someone had a TV on, so I was watching the news cycle over every 30 minutes. In the end, it was driving me nuts, but it was, yeah, usually it's interesting because usually the media is always on the attack mode with the brainwashing, always painting a negative aspect of President Trump.
Right.
But because our leader, our prime minister is over there at the moment, it's weird. It's the media is in contradiction because in
Right.
order to respect our prime minister in the media for political reasons back here at home,
Mm-hmm.
the media is being lighter on President Trump as if our prime minister meeting up with Trump has actually shifted the media slightly. So we're still waiting to see if that's a temporary thing while our prime minister is over there, and then it goes back to the typical brainwashed sort of picking on Trump, making him laughing about him. You even have newsreaders sitting there. He'll go on screen. They'll get him saying something that they think is silly, and then they'll take him off, and then they'll laugh about it, so that it
Oh
paints
gosh.
this picture to the average Australian that the guy's loopy.
Oh,
That's what they're trying to do to Trump over here.
well, you know what? I was just talking to Steve. He's our other co-host that joins us. Usually, we do the Australia, America, Austria report. Steve usually reports from Austria, from Vienna. He's not with us tonight, but he says the
Hey,
same
Steve.
thing. Yeah, say hi to Steve. He says the same thing. I mean, he's in higher upper echelon circles, and um, he's just amazed at people who are usually, he considers, highly intellectual, but they have all bought into the mainstream media, and it's very sad. He feels, I think, sometimes very alone in his support, but he educates himself, and so he knows what's going on. But I think, I'm glad to see that everyone in Australia is showing more. I don't know if it's homage or whether it's just you know the fact that we've treated your prime minister so well, and we've had this very, very lovely state dinner, in the Rose Garden, in fact, and I've been in the Rose Garden reporting from there too. It's really, they've treated him so very well, and of course now they're all at the United Nations. And this morning, Tim, I woke up with the sound of fighter jets flying overhead. So there were fighter jets dispatched this morning for some reason. I did tweet that because on the Twitter news page. I haven't heard anything
Mm.
about it, but it's a little unusual to have fighter jets deployed with, well, however, there are all the world leaders in town at the UN. So, but still, it's like they had to be called in because they've been here now 3 days, and they haven't been here before. So
It sounds what I don't know if I'm in uh, where this came from, but I just looked into that, and what I saw, it was just a show of a show of power,
yeah. Okay.
and it was more directed at the secret behind the scenes, like the secret space program
Hmm.
aspects, like
Hmm.
any rogue aspects that still aren't on side
Hmm.
with the new alliance that may be in opposition. It was like a show of defiance to
Okay.
an aspect of the secret space program, or something that is
Okay.
still slightly rogue. And that's what I just got when I saw
Okay.
that.
Okay. I
Because
mean,
it's like they'll be monitoring and watching,
right.
and depending on where they reside with their own in-house corporate agenda in relation to what's currently unfolding politically on the
Right.
surface of the planet. Yeah, that's what I get from that.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah,
Wow.
it is interesting, and it's unusual as well. But it is unusual circumstances when you have all the world leaders, dignitaries in town for the UN General Assembly. Um, but so yeah, I woke up to rumbling windows, but that's how it is.
Nice.
Yeah, but it's okay. Um, anyway, you're absolutely right. And I think this characterization of President Trump is really what we're seeing from the Democrats, who are in collusion with, as the president says, in collusion with the mainstream media to
Mm.
push a socialist agenda, if you want to sugarcoat it and call it that, because it's far worse than socialism that they wanted to push. But I was, I have a mostly 24/7 news page on Facebook, Twitter, and the comments people are commenting on with regard to, now they're trying to push this impeachment. This is the latest thing. that they had, Nancy Pelosi announced today that they're going to start an impeachment investigation. And, you know, how disgraceful. They couldn't even wait until the president's up there talking to the American, to the world, to the whole world. And the country's doing wonderful policy. There's more peace in the world. You know, there's wonderful things going on, and they have to like humiliate this man by, you know, calling the media for, you know,
Yes.
the announcement of this impeachment investigation. But I'm going to tell you something, Tim. Between me and you and everyone listening, it's like a trap, because you know what, they
Mm.
are absolutely desperate. This old guard,
Yes.
this old guard that ran your country, ran our country behind the scenes, ran almost everything in the world behind the scenes. They're dying out. They're losing money. And it's called the Federal Reserve Central Banking System and all those cronies who are related to that. It's dying out, Tim. But people,
Yeah.
you know what people were commenting, Tim? They were saying, I'm so sick of this. People really get it. Like a lot of like people who follow news on social media get it. And a lot of,
Well,
and even if they're not, they're seeing
yeah.
this, Tim. And I think, you know, there has to be some kind of catalyzing event where, you know, a catalyst where people who are still sleepwalking are really going to wake up and see it for what it is. What do you think?
Yeah.
What do you think?
Yeah, well, in relation to a lot of stuff you just said in the last 5 minutes, starting with what you just said now, I believe that the uplift in the energies on the planet that are shifting the vibration, lifting the consciousness up, is allowing people to also, that shift in vibration allows them to see that the media, the false media, and everything that they're doing is becoming more apparently ridiculous, because
Mm-hmm.
as the vibration goes up, they're more awake and more aware, they're more intuitive, and they can sense something that is carrying a vibration that is a low vibration. So the whole media frenzy is operating in a lower vibrational um,
Yeah.
frequency. And so as everyone's vibration is increasing, they're then being able to have more discernment, because they're feeling the difference, because they're not subjectively immersed in that vibration themselves, if that makes sense. You
Yeah.
know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So there's a rift. It's like, look at the poor little mainstream media. It's becoming so isolated in its pettiness of behavior that we are so evolving and moving beyond, that we're actually leaving it behind. It's not keeping up with who we are as
Right.
humanity, you know? So it's a shame that what is meant to represent all of us is actually the agenda of an elite corporate group of entity of people or whatever, that is pushing for something that they're losing, because as a planet is in vibrational shift, if they're holding on to an old vibrational point of view, they're not going anywhere. So they're getting left behind. So it's their loss, you know, it's their loss. That's unfortunate for them. And that's the perspective. And the more and more people that wake up will see that, then that mainstream media, which feels it's influencing the masses, is actually going to be all alone. And so that democratic point of view, which is actually like a fascist Nazi
Yeah.
perspective, and yet
Exactly.
it's projecting onto the other, that the other is the fascist. But herein, that's reflecting all areas of life here on the planet as well. We have the alter ego in the collective, mirroring back to us in others, because at the end of the day, on a higher level, um, interdimensionally or whatever, if you believe that there are higher realms, at the end of the day, we're all one. And but down here where it's all dualistic, we're seeing this opposition of two separate parties. But really, it's, at the end of the day, it's self fighting with self. That's another way of looking at it. But it doesn't mean that we accept it at this level. We still need to call it for what it is. and name it out, because that's one way of dissolving it, is to wake up and realize what it actually is, so then it can be dissolved and
Yeah.
finished until it just, because then in the future we're going to have a media that
Mm.
represents who
Yeah.
we truly are, aren't we? This Pelosi thing, I only just read
Mm.
about that when I woke up this morning, and it was just a small snippet, and I thought to myself, when you look at the pattern of things, you go, how is that right when these very massive changes and very important events are going on, they've kept this under wraps, waiting for the timing that suits them to pounce upon and try and do
Oh
this.
my
And
God.
so it's a sign of desperation right now, because things are looking so good for the forward movement of Trump, the white hats, Q, everyone, the whole band of you know, people that are for the greater good of humanity. Um, it's really gaining momentum and moving forward. And so the opposition to that still exists
Mm.
is using these things to try and take it down in the last hour. It feels like it's an act of desperation. It's like, let's not do this until he's up there doing this important thing where the world has attention on Trump and all the world leaders, and then we'll hit him with this stuff. Why didn't they do it last week? Why didn't they do it a month ago? You
Well,
see,
you know what?
it's all an agenda. Otherwise, they would be honest and they would have hit this up months ago.
Let's
Yeah.
fast forward, Tim. Let's fast
Hmm.
forward, because you know why they're doing this now? Not just to embarrass the president, because it does. It is so horrible. Let me tell you, they better not find Trump supporters. Better not see these Democrats walking down the street, because these Trump supporters are going to pounce him over the head. Now, let's fast forward, okay? We know that President Trump is ready to release this transcript of this conversation that happened between he and the what is it, the prime minister or the president of Ukraine, right? And
Yes.
regarding what happened, now he withheld some funding, but that's part of the deal that Trump usually does. You know, it's part of a, you know, tariffs, whatever. But the person who was really holding back money was Joe Biden. He wasn't going to give funding to Ukraine unless they took the prosecutor off the case investigating his son, who was on a foreign board collecting a $50,000 a year, you know, salary for sitting on the board of a foreign company, and of course Joe Biden using his political influence in order to make these deals for his son and, you know, to profit from. So clearly, you know, clearly, let's fast forward a minute and find out how do, the world, this is what's so sad, you see, all these world leaders are in town watching this fiasco with the Democrats and embarrassing President Trump, the host country for this United Nations General Assembly, right? Where they're trying
Yes.
to make real world progress, real serious issues, real world peace, trade deals, making the world go round, and you have the Democrats putting a cog in the wheel. And but let's see what happens. Let's see how fast this disappears when this transcript, which they're requesting, when this transcript gets released, and again it embarrasses that they're going to have egg on their face, and let's just hope that this transcript is going to show that, of course, President Trump does everything on the up and up. They've never found anything on him. There was no collusion, no obstruction, nothing. Okay, he's
Yep.
probably a very shrewd businessman, but he does things the right way, you know. And so, if they had something on him, Tim, certainly they would have found it by now. But I have a feeling, let's fast forward and find out what's going to happen, and it's going to make it so obvious, Tim. My point is that it will become so obvious why they're doing this now, to embarrass the president, because it's going to expose. Let's see if Attorney General Barr is going to release these declassification, which was ordered a year ago. Okay, it was ordered a year ago by the president in a press statement, right, to
Yep.
declassify the FISA, declassify these documents, declassify the IG report. So we're still waiting for Attorney General Barr to make that decision. And let's just say President Trump does that this week. Let me tell you something. And no one's going to hear the word impeachment anymore. And they're going to have egg on their face, but they're going to anyway. And it just seems like, you know, Tim, the Q team, right? Who tells us? I mean, this is like they keep setting traps for these people, and they keep just absolutely running into them. They keep running into traps, and how brilliant the strategy is of Trump to get them to use all of their ammunition so that they're out of ammunition, and then boom. I mean, it's almost like Trump doesn't even have to work hard at it, you know? So what is that? What is that quote? Don't interfere. This Sun Tzu, don't interfere with an enemy when he's in the process of destroying himself, or something like that.
Yes. Yeah, it's quite amazing that he seems to manage situations like this as if he's made for it. Um, at the end of the day, my perspective is whether they find anything legitimate or not,
Hmm.
it's irrelevant to the future of the whole planet, because if you have the planet that's on the most optimal timeline and it needs to go to the highest place, then you're going to have there is many so much support for this,
Hmm.
and I mean on a spiritual level, or whatever, extraterrestrial, whatever you want to call it. There is so much support for where the world needs to go politically,
Hmm.
and irrespective of the human, like Trump, and what he may or may not have done, what is at stake here is the actual future of the planet. So it's irrelevant. It's really about where the planet needs to be at. And so if they did find any dirt on him
Hmm.
at the end, well, are we going to take that and turn the planet um, in a downward spiral and go back to some dark negative thing? I don't think so.
Hmm.
So whatever this is, I believe it is divinely been taken care of and orchestrated in some way. So I don't think there's anything to worry about, and just see where this goes.
Well, just
So,
a little tidbit here. I did, by the way, I did speak to Alex Collier the other day, and
mhm.
Alex did indicate that we do have interdimensional help here. That basically everything is done at this point, and that they're like the cleanup crew. It's kind of like the cleanup crew is out, trying to. You don't want to shock people. You don't want you don't want people to, like, be rioting in the street, and because a lot of people are still asleep. They don't really know about the deep state. They don't really know about the secret society infiltration. And, they don't really get the whole big picture. A lot of people
Yes,
think that the Federal Reserve is part of our government. They don't realize it's a private, corporation with a board of directors and all of that. And that
I
it
still
was,
get told. I still get told that I'm not living in the real world, and then I have to contend with processing that projection onto me.
yeah.
And
Jeez.
because if I empathically want to feel offended by that and then take that on, that's a huge load on my shoulders, to think that there's so many people out there that are going, why is Tim on this path? Because he's not living in the real world, because they think they're in the real world. Whereas to me, and I'm not going to tell them they're not in the real world, because that's not my business.
Yeah.
That's their business. So
Yeah.
it's not their business to tell me what world I'm in either. But you know, at least I'm the one that's not. I'm not going to tell them they're not in the real world and start an argument with them. So
But Tim,
that's
we
their
were just
business.
talking about this last night. How there's people that are
Yes.
doing this projection, right? And it's like triggering us. I mean, I was so triggered yesterday. Oh my God! I
Yeah.
thank God I talked to Tim last night, because he calmed me down. I was actually, I was doing my POTUS report, and I had to stop and rant a little bit because I was so triggered. I couldn't believe how triggered I got by somebody. I was really It's really unusual for me, because
Yeah. I think.
but I did. I got so triggered, and it's like people, it's like, I can't process your junk for you, man. I got my own, you know?
Yeah. I think these waves that are hitting us, these shifts that are unfolding right now, and are
Yeah.
also reflecting in the matrix, with all the events that are unfolding too, are a reflection of that change. It's asking of anything that's still inside, that hasn't been processed or let go.
Yeah.
It's actually bringing it up to raise its ugly head so that we can deal with it. So I think we are going to experience that triggering through a mirroring of, it's like a mirroring of the alter ego. So even that which
Yeah.
we may be opposed to as not being in the greater good is still an aspect within self, because we are truly a part of everyone else, even though
Yeah.
there's differences of ideologies. And
Mm.
so the collective conscious alter ego of someone else that really triggers us is also like, when we need to look at ourselves and why am I triggered by this? That the fact that the other person is being the way they are is also, it's their business. It's not really my business.
Yeah.
And you can't tell people to change. That's not our job. All you can do is look at what your part in this is as being triggered and try and address what that is and shift it. And then it doesn't matter what anyone else thinks. If you're not triggered anymore, then you're no longer attached to it. So therefore, it's not even in your reality.
Yeah, I don't
And
know why we care about what people think anyway.
yeah,
I mean,
I
like,
think
why do
it's
we
just
care?
showing us, because it's showing us that it's still there. Otherwise, we wouldn't care. So
Right.
it's like it's come back to say, deal with me now so that you can move on, because this part that's still in you cannot exist in the new higher vibration coming in. So let's
Yeah.
deal with it now. Let's think, consciously look at what it is and move through it and shift it. Yeah. So I think
Well, I
that's
mean,
what's
are we
going on.
talking about ego and pride here? Is that what we're talking about?
Yeah, there's a part of that too. Yeah, I came up yesterday. I actually wrote it down for you. I put it in words. Someone else helped me. It was about control, and so and there will be many others that can probably relate to this, because it's not so much a personal thing as much as it is a personal thing, but it's in the collective. The fear of being controlled, and that can also manifest unconsciously as needing to control others so that you don't get controlled. And so, that can manifest out in society, down the street, in the post office, or in the workplace with work colleagues, or in friendships or anything. So it's that energetic power trip. It's like the fear of someone else enslaving you. It gets back to that ancient enslavement, probably relating to reptilian enslavement of humanity, and probably on other planets
Back
and
in the
other
days of
planes of
Egypt.
existence.
Back in the
Yeah,
days of
like,
Egypt. Well,
yes,
well, you
it's a
know what?
very
But
deep thing.
this is why people aren't waking up, because they don't want to believe that they are complete slaves, and not only slaves, hostages on this planet. They don't want to believe it, because just what you're saying, Tim. I think just what you're saying. It's very. I'll tell you, it's almost. If it wasn't for President Trump, who is changing this, whether for whatever reason, he's the one doing it. All right, and
Mm.
it would seem completely hopeless. Once you do realize, and once you go down that rabbit hole, and once you see what reality really is, it can be very, very scary. I mean, it can be extremely frightening for some people who, look, my background's in psychology too. And so when you take down somebody's reality, you have to have something to replace it with, or they really will go, I think, crazy. Okay. So it's like you have to do it brick by brick by brick. You can't just knock the whole idea of their reality down without giving them something to replace it with. And that's what President Trump's trying to do. I think the whole team behind him, not just the president. I think there's a lot of world leaders who are on board with him now, and I think that of course, we have the military. But there is a mandate, to have 1,000 years of peace on this planet now. It's
As
fine.
foretold throughout the ages by many
Yeah.
predictions, and even from off-world. Yeah, it's got to be a reality.
And it's a mandate.
It's the truth.
And it's a
Yes.
mandate. It means it has to happen. I mean, it's like decreed by the creator here that we're entering our golden age, and it will be. I don't think you really want to argue with with the creator on that one. let it be so. But the old guard doesn't want to give up their power, Tim, and this is what's causing the embarrassment. What's causing they're almost intoxicated on the power and control that they had, and they don't want to give it up.
Yeah, it's almost like internet free speech is the mirror of the evolution as we, move toward this ascension of 1,000 years of peace. It's almost like to have another perspective. Imagine being on another planetary sphere and where you're intercepting all the radio signals of humanity from the First World War, going through the Second World War, and then we have the rise of the internet communications. And imagine that they're intercepting all those communications, and they're simply analyzing from a psychological perspective and study of the human race as we're moving through time, and all this noise of all these communications across the planet through the internet of people like you and me talking about this. It can't be for nothing. It's indicative. It's indicative. The fact that we're talking about this is indicative that there is a shift and it's real. And from that perspective of someone outside intercepting all the communications like this one, they would be observing us as we're in the process of shifting. Now, that would be a huge case study for someone who was invested in observing a species somewhere else, going from a state of fear into a state of, whatever you want to call it, love, or being into a higher state of consciousness,
Right.
of integrity, respect, and I can't think of the word, but you know what I'm saying.
Yeah, and I'm just looking at that blue sky as the clouds pass by and change the coloring on you, and it's nice to see like normal looking clouds rather than the straight line ones from the chemtrails. But it does look like it's a beautiful sky. And by the way, folks, when I announced the date today, September 24th, it's actually September 25th where Tim is. So for your audience, Tim, over in Australia, I wanted to just make sure that they know this wasn't recorded yesterday. It was recorded today, but it's yesterday here. So
So
yeah,
what time is it there now?
right now it's like 10 p.m. East Coast New
Yeah.
York time.
Yeah, it's 12:08 p.m. on the 25th of September here.
Right.
So
So
we're just ahead of you. But most of the news and information about shifts are written by people in the Northern Hemisphere. So I assume when they're talking about a shift is happening on this date,
yeah,
we're going to be in the next digit on the calendar for the timing of the arrival of those shifts or something.
right.
But I mean, I guess it's not always about the actual date. It's more in that sort of time of 36 hours, and it's increasing, and then waning as
Yeah,
it.
there's going to be a massive solar wind hitting the planet too on the 27th to the 28th. So if you go to Real BP Earthwatch on YouTube, you can check out his latest report. There's a huge corona hole facing the Earth. There's going to be a very large. It's already registered. Yeah, it's already registered, so that we're going to receive it on the 27th, 28th, according to his report. So that's going to cause an uptick in earthquakes, which already has, right, I think above the
Yes,
Dominican Republic, there was already an earthquake 6.1. There's going to be a whole bunch of them. It's going to
in
cause,
Indonesia as well.
yeah.
3 or 4 days ago. This is really, really interesting. I don't know if it's the same thing I saw, but there was this guy talking, and he was talking as an audio and had a picture of the sun, and he stated that he says that it's actually the solar flash event. I don't know if that's true, but it was interesting, like that someone out there has actually declared that this massive solar flare event around this time, with this is going to be the actual event. I'm not saying it is or it isn't. I'm processing that to assess whether it if someone's jumped the gun here and they're a little bit ahead of themselves, or whether it is completely true or partial in part, the beginning in part of something true. I really don't know. Let's just wait and see.
I think that that it's been coming in incrementally, though, Tim, because I think that if that it
Yes.
came in all at once, it would probably blow our heads apart. It'd blow our bodies apart, you know. I don't know if we could take it all in. When that happens, it's like I get like headaches sometimes, or like a coronal mass ejection hits the earth.
Mm.
Sometimes I get, I feel tired, really tired, like glued to my bed, like like sometimes you just feel weighted energy on you, so can you imagine, if it was something even more intense? So but
Yeah.
this is good.
Something that'll blow your socks off.
This is supposed to be really intense, though, so I think our viewers, I think it's good to go check that out. He made a point of saying that it was like 470 kilometers per second, or 470 million kilometers per second. I don't know, some incredibly fast. Like, he really, really, really needed to stress this, that
So
it's
is that faster than normal? Because I don't understand that, because I
yes,
haven't read the
according,
science and
yeah,
then put the quantum
yeah.
metaphysical understanding up against next to the science to make it
Yeah,
work.
yeah, he said it was higher, much higher than usual, because it was such a huge gaping, huge, sunspot, whatever it was, where it was coming
Wow.
from, and it was Earth facing. So we're going to get it. I don't know which side of the Earth will be facing, but what it's going to do is it's going to really compress our magnetopause, which is the protective layer around the Earth, and who knows, that could be an EMP, and who knows, we could have electrical problems. We don't know. It could affect the magnetic poles for
Well, our
airplanes and things
consciousness.
like that, and
Yeah.
our consciousness, of course.
Yeah.
That will
Yeah. You
be
were talking
interesting.
about this the other day. You were
Yeah,
mentioning something the other day.
yeah. The Schumann frequency is not
Yes.
only, yeah, it's not only a measure of the Earth. It is a measure of the aggregate consciousness of all its inhabitants, all of humans. So
And that, yes.
humans and Earth collectively, it is a measure, and it will tell us where we are in our ascension and how we're able to react to, like, for instance, when this solar wind comes in and hits us, how we're going to react to that. I bet, folks, you take a look and watch for, especially on our Twitter feed, go to the Pound Report GoldFish. We'll have that Schumann frequency posted up there. Let's take a look at what happens on the 27th and 28th, because that's a measure of us. Because
Mm,
we're like little batteries, So it's a
mm.
measure of our aggregate consciousness, our electromagnetic frequency, because we have electromagnetic. We're electromagnetic beings, so it's our consciousness, and of course the Earth as well. Go ahead, Tim.
Yeah.
I know you wanted to comment.
Uh, yeah. So I can't remember what it was I was going to comment on, but like, what is happening right now with this is significant, because personally, I I will continue to hold my mainstream job and go to work irrespective of what's happening energetically, and just cope with it, even if it means with the stress compromising me, my immune system on some level, which has been an issue, but it's been a lot better lately. But for the first time in probably 10 or 11 years of me holding my mainstream job, I was um, being told very strongly, you
Mm,
need to not be at work right now.
mm,
And so I looked and I said, well, I can take holiday pay, but and you know, there was a fight, there was a tug of war going on here against
mhm,
my sense of loyalty to doing the 9 to 5 thing and going there, and like, I don't want to take holidays. I want to save them for something in the future, because there might be something important in the future.
yeah,
And yet something's going, no, you need to stop. And I'm in my third week now, and what it's done, it's allowed me to really tap and process these energies. So these energies are that intense that
mm,
I've had to not even be at
wow,
work,
wow,
and that's the first time I've actually elected to select to be to be it that way.
Now,
Because I
Tim,
think
because
I would have fallen apart.
yeah,
Actually, I would have
but
fallen apart.
your work is very physical, though. You're a drill operator, right? Or like you explain what you
Yeah, yeah.
do
We're
because
working.
it's a very physical job. Yeah,
It's geotechnical drilling. So we
yeah,
do difficult access geotech soil test drilling. So there's no fracking. It's not oil or gas or anything
yeah.
like that. It's
Mhm.
simply for the future engineering projects in infrastructural development, where usually they're preliminary,
Mhm.
and we drill holes in the ground. They could be 10 meters deep.
Mhm.
It could be for a car park. It could be a decommissioned service station, and
Mhm.
where they've ripped out the tanks and they want to see if there's contamination from leaking fuel. And
Yeah.
they got little instruments, and we just go down, and then they'll bring a bulldozer in later, and then they'll pick up all that dirt, sit it in a paddock, turn it over to let all
Mm.
the fumes go out into the atmosphere.
But Tim,
Um,
I can totally
um,
understand though how that physically, since your job is so physical, how these energies, really would
it's
really impact you.
I have a very laborious job.
Yeah.
I'm 46. We lift heavy rods that are 3 meters long and weigh about 20 kilos. We hold them. We twist threads together with our bare
Yeah.
hands.
Yeah.
There's a lot of stuff that like the most modern machinery,
Yeah.
um, would take some of the work I do away. I can really see robots doing what I do um,
Right.
in the future, like
Mm.
that can lift things like this and then carry stuff.
Right.
And so, yeah, I can see where this is going
Right.
from advanced technological perspectives. But at the moment, it's still been similar to what it has been. There's been a lot of changes. But yeah, we drill holes, we bring out core samples. We
Mm.
nearly got a contract in Antarctica once, and that was frightening for me, the idea of getting on a big orange ship in New Zealand or Tasmania and then going down to the Australian base. And with what I know about certain things, I'm like, do I really want to go down there? Because that exposes you to
It's not
certain
that far. It's so funny hearing you
agencies.
talk about that though, Tim, because we're up here in, the northern hemisphere and Antarctica seems so far away and it's like a hop, skip, and a jump for you down there. Not
And
really
it's
that far. It's not
it
that far.
feels a long way away from us, and it seems to be very separate from our idea of reality. But if you get on a plane and go down to Tasmania and then go down to the southern tip, and you'll be looking out over the sea and you'll go, wow, Antarctica's that way. But then if you go to the north coast, go to Darwin, or even to, Cairns, where you're facing the North Pacific, um, you know, but you go to Darwin and you look across the water north and you go, Indonesia, Timor's just over there, New
Yeah.
Guinea, that whole, islands of, they're only an hour's flight away, or like, I think it's like 500 kilometers, which is less than the distance between an hour's flight or a 50-minute flight between Melbourne and Sydney for all those business people that are going back and forth for
Of course.
commerce,
Uh-huh.
and Brisbane. But when people are up in Darwin, the energy up there and the sense of collective community feels more like you're a part of the Asian
It's wild.
zone
Yeah.
than you are the rest of the Australian continent,
Wow.
because geographically, you are something like 3,000 kilometres away from Canberra, which is the equivalent of DC, which is the heart of our governance. And yet in Darwin, you are actually physically closer to the political capital of the Indonesian governance. And so even though you're in Australian jurisdiction, you feel like you're more a part of an Indonesian sort of
Right.
energy. It's really bizarre. And the people up there, you've got lots of different indigenous tribes, and they still fight. Unfortunately, like if you go down to on a Sunday morning, if you go for an early walk past the hospitals there's a lot of indigenous people with bandages around their heads, going because they got drunk and then they fought, because they're still fighting tribal wars that what they've been fighting even 100 years ago, before European civilization came in and pushed their way in here. So not to say anything negative about them, but it's just that they still have their tribal ways, because they're very much into their own system. They don't really understand or even that some of them don't even know how to acknowledge the
Mm,
westernized legal system. And I don't blame them for that because they're so much into who they are as a culture. It's just
sure.
how they are. It's in their blood. It's in their genes. So
Right.
they're a different type of species.
Mm,
They hold a different consciousness, and sometimes that can be functional, and sometimes it can be very dysfunctional.
mm,
But that's a part of what we've created by pushing them to try and be what we are,
right.
rather than let them take the steps
Mm,
and make the empowered decisions. We
mm,
sort of fuck them over a bit like the American Indians there in North America. But you've also got New Zealand Maoris, you've got Polynesians, you've got people from Vanuatu, Solomon Islands, you've got all these Polynesian groups that come across to the mainland, to Australia, or
mm,
mainland. It's not really a mainland, but they're sort of part of the same economic zone, because
right.
we're the closest sort of
Mainland, exactly.
organized first world country that
Right.
um, helps them to in their governance and stuff. But yeah, it's funny. Like there's a lot. It's an interesting region. We have New Guinea. It's funny that New Guinea was never colonized, but it was highly influenced. But
Isn't there
like up
like
there.
isn't there like Papua New Guinea? Isn't there like the largest number of languages spoken in that area, probably than anywhere in the world? It's like a very highly concentrated area. When I was studying linguistics, I remembered that these were some statistics. It was in the literature we were reading about the languages in Papua New Guinea, because you're an English speaking country, yet there are many, but you're extremely cosmopolitan too, though.
Yeah, yeah. They've basically gone from being um, similar to people in the Amazon. In some ways, they might have been more organized. They might have been um, agricultural, semi nomadic agricultural um, farming sort of, living in the rainforest, native type people. But um, they're an interesting mix of blood themselves. There's a history there with Egyptian, um, Phoenician
Mm,
boat visitations and some of their customs. So yeah, they're an interesting people. There's many languages, just like in Australia. There's been many different languages, and it's unfortunate that some of them have been lost forever. Because if we had recorded them, there'd be able to be a study into work out, a greater history from the origins of those languages and so on, because they
right,
do tell a story in
sure.
themselves.
Well, today at the
But
United Nations, the president was talking about, you know, he was trying to encourage more world peace, obviously, and of course, more respect for people's, uh, you know, I would say, r- right to express their conscience, whatever their religion is, also rights for women, right for life, um, not to have a government impose these draconian laws on women and their bodies and the law, and let the, right to life, things of that nature. Um, when we're excluding, in the case of a danger to the mother, we not including that in the conversation, because what do you pick, right? So but I thought it echoed very interestingly in that hall, how the president was talking about trying to bring peace. And he just said, these wars that never end, these ongoing, these continuous wars. I mean, everyone in that room, all those world leaders, this really echoed in that chamber today. And it was like, we're tired of these wars. It's like, it's really the politicians' problems. Why are we fighting? These guys are elected to do this job, get the job done. Don't bring citizens into more and more and more and more war. We don't want it. So it was very profound. And although he didn't write the speech, it was very profound. And of course, women's rights and empowering. And the president made a point saying, a country is going to be more, it's going to be stronger, and it's going to be more productive, and it's going to be more successful if you encourage equality for women, and encourage giving respecting women and integrating women into all aspects of society and
Yes.
culture. And it's very interesting. This is what you're saying, okay? Is exactly the point. That's why I'm bringing it up. Is that you have so many different cultures and so many different countries. It's amazing, that we haven't destroyed this planet yet, just fighting each other. How stupid, right? But I mean,
Yeah.
at some point, as human beings, as earthlings, we have to come together as earthlings, as mankind, and we have to at least embrace the fact that, that we have to have some egalitarianism between us, that we are all entitled to the same rights under God, whichever God it is. That, you want to have a different name for God, whatever. But the problem
Mm.
is when one God says, well, I can kill you because it's okay if you're an infidel. I mean, that's crazy, right, Tim?
Yeah, like I did a video last night where I read out this thing called Jesus and the New Scriptures. Someone thought it would be a great idea, and I said, yeah, I'll do it. And in that material, yeah, it was explaining that most of the religions have oppressed women, which was actually against the will um, of of Creator. Um, that's actually human men have done that, or rather draconians. It's pushing down the feminine, and so even to this day, we're still trying to sort out the ramifications of that happening in more ancient times. And so, yeah, it's all these dogmatic, archaic belief systems that are still inherent within the collective that need to be released, shifted, and released. Because at the end of the day, you know, all is equal. It was even stated that the Roman Catholic Church, whoever was behind it, um, made Mary Magdalene uh, to look like a prostitute when she actually wasn't, because by having that story there for people to absorb into their consciousness, sets up the foundation, the template for women to be degraded and lower and less than. Because if you think of this important person who was a part of someone like Jesus Christ being
Right.
a so-called prostitute, it's pushing. Um, it just has an effect on all women. That story, it's made to have an impact, to condition them in a way that is not really true or vibrationally. Like, I'm not saying myself that prostitution is a bad thing or anything. I mean, everyone has different views on that too. But I'm saying that the church has made a story of a woman to make it look like it was like very bad, naughty, evil behavior, and somehow every woman is on some level felt like they're connected
Yeah, it's an
to that
archetype.
energy.
It's an archetype, just
Yes,
like
it's an
Eve in the
archetype.
garden.
Yes.
It's like, oh, women are bad. Eve in the garden was tempted by the serpent, and then here we have, a whore hanging around with Jesus. I mean, come on. But you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right, Tim. Right? I mean, we have to be re-educated. And when I spoke to Alex the other day, he said it's going to take about 4 or 5 years for us to totally get re-educated in our real history, the truth. A lot of truths people are going to have a hard time swallowing. I'll tell you honestly. Um, you know, we have been. We don't know how programmed we really have been, Tim, do we?
Yeah.
And what
And
you're
I'm
saying is
sure
just evidence of that. Yeah.
to bring in um, a third party perspective, even to be it real or just for the sake of the theoreticalness, to get a third perspective which shines another angle on it. If you were to say go to another planet where there were human or human type male and females, pretty much like humans like us,
Mhm.
on other planets that are more civilized, more advanced than us, and existing in higher states of consciousness and
Yeah.
higher emotional values and behaviors, in however they're. If we were to a bunch of people get in a ship and go and then observe that and study and see how they are, I think we'd be blown away to see that what's possible and what we can be here ourselves. So,
Well, in
mm,
our defense, we have been manipulated, programmed, drugged, poisoned, electromagnetically fried, you name it. So it's really not our fault. I'm defending humans. It's not our fault. We've been
mm.
here as debt slaves. We've been here as slaves in every other way. We've been, held hostage here. In fact, Tim, wouldn't you say that this has really inhibited our evolution? Like this hijacking of humanity. It's not
Yes,
fair.
yes, and no.
It's not
Yeah,
fair to us. Yeah, it's not fair.
from being inside it and looking at it, yes, it's a hijacking, and it seems like it's a very bad thing. It could have been better, but then on another level, like some material I was reading last night, so it's fresh on the brain, is that um, Earth is a very special place in the universe, or at least in this galaxy, where the physical realm was set at such a low vibration compared to other spheres that the experiment here is an exception to the norm. And so by choosing to come here incarnately is like a huge event. It's a huge honor because here the game and the laws of the um, dimensional this dimensional realm are set up that, of course, it's going to be felt as this duality of good and bad, and and all that. And so, in one way, yeah, it feels like from the inside that it's stifled to evolution. But on the other hand, I think from the incarnate soul that wants to do something different to the rest of the galaxy or the universe by actually being a part of how Earth is set up is hugely educational for the spiritual soul body, um, from all the crap that occurs here. So we're always got to look at it like that too, because at the end of the big game of things, even that which we're opposed to, which is the dark, as part of the big game of the setup, and everyone will do, every existing being, good, bad, or evil, or whatever, is going to they're going to not only do a, 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 a life review for each life, but when with the planet moving into ascension and moving up to a higher vibration, there's going to be, I think, a review of the whole term of Earth's existence in duality, and how the illusion of the game of good and evil played out. And then, you know, because I think even that which we are opposed to, they originally were born of source energy,
Mm,
and so everything
yes.
everything is, yeah. So
But it
there's
went too
also that
far.
way
It
of
went
looking
too
at it.
far, though. I mean, I think it
Yeah,
was totally
yeah,
out
it
of
did.
control. It was so out of control that there. I mean, I mean,
Yeah,
according to
true.
some people, I mean, souls were coming back. Look, when I was doing Country Roads reports with Winston Trout, Winston was a very wise soul, I'll tell you, and I know he had some very special purposes here. And one of the things he talked about was the fact that souls were coming back so traumatized that some just couldn't be repaired, and you have to really restructure them, and it wasn't their fault because it was from the trauma on this planet. And it's not fair. I mean, it's like if you contract for something, if your soul contracts for a certain experience, and that's not what really happens here. I mean, that's pretty. I think it's pretty bad if you come here
Yeah.
and you can't live out your soul contract. What happens? You know, we don't really get to know that. We're not privy to those realms yet, but let's hope that we will be soon, one day, soon,
Mm.
in our
I was
lifetime.
just I was just imagining in what you were saying, that it got out of hand is like everyone decided to take a ride on a roller coaster, and then something in the electronics went wrong, and then the roller coaster um, never stopped, and it just kept going and it kept going and it kept going, and then it got faster and faster, and it was just like, you know, how do we stop this thing? It's out of control.
I don't think anybody could have foreseen, this thing, because apparently the dark, right? So these are the fallen angels. These are the ones who believe that they it was they were separated from source, and they started to believe like this AI, which we'll save for another conversation, but this artificial intelligence believes that it's source itself, and it can be source itself, it can do what source can do, and it's trying to take over, in really insidious ways. And so the dark kind of felt like, I don't need, creator, I don't need heaven, I don't need God. We have our own power, we're our own gods, and this is what they've done on the planet to such a degree that they were hijacking us like they were stopping our ascension, but they couldn't stop it. They were, I would say, delaying it, but they weren't. I don't think they could stop something that God, our Creator, has given us and has granted us.
So maybe their lesson then is to realize that if they have a comprehension that something cannot be stopped, then there is something greater than what their belief system is. So they have to stop and reassess and say, well, what is that? And then that would cause them to then um, address themselves, and then
Yes,
bang, and then we have. See, what's that
right.
saying from somewhere? Is it Conversations with God or something, where it says
Yeah,
all things that came from me will return to me, something
right,
like that.
right.
Um,
That's a good point, Tim, because then it, of course, by virtue of that happening, it proves that there's a God, a creator, higher than them, higher than the ones who worship the dark, the Satan, but and all of that, and that they are not, God in and of themselves. This is a deep topic, a deep conversation we're having. I'm sure there's a lot of
yeah,
people. I'd love to see the viewers' comments on this because
it's like if an artificial intelligence, its limitation existed within a lower vibration, and then at some stage, if it if it has to evolve and it has the desire to evolve, it's going to have to deal with coming into the awareness that it has a cap on its limitation, and what is that cap? And then it says, "Hang on, there's more than this cap where we're stuck at. So what is that?" And that's where you have the ability for them to change, because they need to come into the awareness that there's much more than their spectrum
right,
where they stop at. And when they know there's more than that, and they feel they need to be a part of that, that's when you have them having to make a decision to step into a cooperation with a greater uh, consciousness
mm,
that is omnipresently existent. I think that's wow. Yeah, I think that's something. Yes, for any artificial intelligence or even draconian beings, and I think it's something like that was mentioned in the material yesterday, that these draconian beings that had their own belief system about a powerful devil god realized, they came to this realization, and had to, they had to change, because they realized that um, it's you're not evolving unless you recognize something where you're stopped at, because everyone has a desire to go higher.
well, not all beings, can ascend. I think there are some who can't, and and we'll see how that all works out. But I'm looking forward to receiving, the truth of our history, and without all of the manipulation.
Yes.
And yeah, that'll be really quite amazing. And the funny thing is that, okay, so there's some gurus that I have known personally. I've interviewed on the report as well, the Goldfish Report, spiritual gurus who have said basically, Earth was essentially a trap for the dark, that it was an anomaly, really, to a certain extent, and that we all agreed to come and help Earth because Earth was in big trouble, and our souls made these contracts to come here to do this, and that we were basically the bait. We agreed to be the bait. I'm not so sure we agreed to be, dinner, but we agreed to be the bait to trap the dark, and to end it once and for all. Because as you know, the stories go, Tim, that these beings who apparently were controlled by AI anyway, these draconian beings who are supposedly, and I don't have facts to back this up, folks. These are just legends and stories from other people who have done the research on it. But I could be wrong. But we're just going to go with what's been out there. That this is basically the case, where these draconians, who are basically the rulers here, behind the scenes, where nobody knows they exist, um, unless and you're involved in that. But that they can't, they can't evolve either, and so they were doing the
Mm.
genetic testing and manipulation and all of this as well. But it's going to be very interesting to see what comes to fruition here. But the thinking is that they themselves have been manipulated by artificial intelligence.
Yeah. Yeah, I've even like heard, that it's arachnids. There's the reptilians, then it's artificial intelligence, and then above that is arachnids. And but at the end of the day, going back to creator or source energy, I think um, I just got this perspective that if the dark hadn't been explored, where source is just source, and there's everything's all, you know, kumbaya, then whatever the limits of evolution were there, by allowing for the dark to exist, it opened up another realm of exploration and self-reflection, so that at the journey's end of the dark, when that all returns back to
Mhm.
source, and its information, like Akashi information, all beings in the light have the collective memory of what the dark is. And so it's inherent knowledge without us having to repeat going back into the dark, because it's already been done. And so it becomes a part of the further evolution of the entire universe, because it has all the information from
Right.
playing out the experiment of the dark. And when it all goes back to the light, it's remembered. And so it never has to be done again, because that has all been attained um, as knowledge of knowing, of a knowing of that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, look, but
Yeah.
there's lots of different universes and lots of different, so many, this development of civilizations and societies, as Michio Kaku, the MJ12 physicist, has said, that you have a level 0 civilization, you have a level 1 civilization, and it's all classified by different levels of how the society works or doesn't work collectively, as a unit.
Yeah.
And it's quite interesting because you know in terms of this universe, this is, I hope, the the end of the dark for sure, and it goes back to source to be hopefully restructured and never never repeated, at least not in this universe. In other universes that are maybe younger, it's possible they may, like you said, benefit from that Akashic information. Um, but yet, do they need to go through the same, their souls need to go through the same kind of experience in order to grow. Because that's, you know, that's what Winston said. He said, you know, the everlasting covenant, which was something that Joseph Smith talked about,
Mm.
was about, you know, Mother, Father, God saying, you know, we're going, you know, for souls to be more like us, we're going to put you in this experience on earth, and there's going to be duality, and there's going to be pain, and there's going to be suffering. And that's why it's like these souls came back to source, and it was like they were so traumatized they couldn't be healed, or it was just not what they were expecting, and people weren't evolving. I think that's what was happening. It was like people weren't evolving. It wasn't going as they planned. So they created this new and everlasting covenant. And so that's what Winston sometimes talked about on our programs. And for our viewers, you can go to our Vimeo site. You can find that on our website at thegoldfishreport.com, and you can click on the educational programs that Winston used to talk about, our country roads reports, which were, let me tell you, folks, you know, that's really a gem. It's hardly that generation of people, you know, that kind of information in history is just dying out, and it's really a gem if you want to go and get some real, you know, history and stories. That this man really had a lot of that to share, and I was very privileged to be part of that. So, but I think you're right, Tim. I hope that they can just go to the Akashic and not have to redo it. But from what I was, you know, from what this one guru was telling me spiritually, that we were basically bait, and but it was for this
Yeah.
purpose of finally ending this anomalous situation, whatever, with the dark. You know.
Yeah. I think the fact that it's inherent that we have an explorational manner, you know, exploring the unknown, and that can manifest as incarnate souls going, I don't know what's out there beyond this sea. I want to see what's out there. Maybe there's other lands with other people. And so it's that explorational of the unknown and the daring to push yourself past what you believe to be your known boundaries. And so at the level of creatorship, at the level of source energy, maybe source itself said, you know, I'm sitting here having a wonderful time experiencing myself as everything, but I want to push some boundaries here. I want to see what I look like from outside of self. You know, I want to get a selfie. You know, give me a giant selfie stick that is external to my entire system of existence so that I can see what I am outside myself, looking back in itself with a separated external thing. And so,
Wow, that's
and
cool.
so,
So we're God's
yeah,
selfie. We're all God's selfie. Is that what you're saying?
in a sense, I mean,
Ah,
we're in the system. Yeah. But even, like
it's interesting.
even the idea of the Trinity is
Mhm.
like that. God is, um, the idea of, a sense of self, and yet it is everything. And then as a creator, the creation, and then in the creation you have
Oops.
sparks of the, oh,
Am I
you there?
losing you, Tim? Yeah, there you go.
No, I've got 20% left, so it probably
Okay.
will decline soon.
Yeah,
But
we're
yeah,
gonna have to wrap this up because I don't know, we've been
yeah.
going for a while. But it's good. It's
So
all good.
so those who are experiencing individual aspects within the creation, then that source energy might say, I want to experience myself being subject to myself, looking back at self. You know, so there's all these. It's, yeah, like it's quite interesting. But just one thing I want to mention, changing the topic here and
Yeah, go ahead.
getting out of the deep stuff because it's getting too deep. Um,
Yeah, it is.
well, it's like
It's getting
my
deep.
head's going. Yeah, I'm getting a
Very.
headache. But third, I've got this thing here. Third party has succeeded in passing a permanent indictment on legal firms protecting the entity, USA Corporation Inc. So the America can now be a republic for its people. There's something about Able Danger. Someone in their feed said that there's a third party that's actually done something to the legal agencies protecting the corporate entity, which is basically the cabal.
Yeah, he said there was a permanent injunction according to Field McConnell on Able Danger, there was a permanent injunction issued. It was an award from a court in Athens, Georgia, that there was well, actually, it was an arbitration decision. So that it was a 500, according to him, it was a 580-point complaint in which each complaint was found to be bona fide and I guess without challenge. We would say that way. What does it actually mean? Right, they were saying something to the effect that I guess all the legal mumbo jumbo, okay, let's start with the Admiralty law, how they're claiming we were birthed into via the birth canal, that we were born into the sea. We were docked, so a doctor delivered us, and we were docked in a hospital on the dock, so to speak. Like this whole description of how they,
Maritime law.
yeah, it's
Same thing
maritime
with
law,
our police force here is it's British maritime law, but it's on the
right?
land.
That's the problem. I mean, it's not, we are on the land. We should have law of the land, not law of the sea, because we're not sea dwellers. According to the British law, if you haven't claimed yourself being a live human being by the age of 7, that you're considered lost at sea or dead. So your name, your birth certificate then would be in all capital letters, and then so you're either a corporation or you're a deceased person, if your name is in all capital letters. And so
Yeah.
so this is how they created the straw man accounts. And when we were talking about these heavy subjects, we're talking about how Jesus came here to prepay our debts. If our contract was to come here and we contracted to be this surety, so to speak, for this trapment of the dark, Jesus was our surety to make sure that our debts were prepaid. And that's
Mm.
really what, so it's a little bit more, it's deep. I'm not going to go any deeper because it's getting a little bit late,
Yep.
but yeah. So somehow all of this chicanery is going to be, is
Well,
done. And you're right, so the USA Corporation, by virtue of dissolving, or the USA Corporation, which President Trump is supposed to be reconciling in a bankruptcy, this is coming to fruition. The last payment date on this bankruptcy is the payment that's due is on September 30th, which is the
yeah.
end of our fiscal year. So it'll be interesting then to see what happens with this, Tim. So please keep us updated on
Well, I want to put this idea out there. It's probably already been thought of. That it may have substance, it may not. But post RV, when people have got trillions of funds and they can actually basically buy up legal departments and using what the cabal has been doing to everyone else in the same terms, but for the good of everyone, basically. Fund legal departments to then change that our birth certificates are actually makes us shareholders in all the money that's on the planet. So every citizen born with a birth certificate, that instantly makes them become a shareholder rather than a slave. And so it's the opposite. We're empowered by the birth certificate, and that makes us a shareholder, an equal shareholder in all of the funds that exist upon the planet. So if that can just be switched from the negative to the positive, that would be, I think, one way of dealing with the financial system while it still exists before it's phased out
I would go
in the
as far
future.
as saying this, that we're not shareholders of a corporation. We're beneficiaries of a trust, we're of a trust, and that means the Global Trust Heritage accounts, the Saint Germain Trust, and all these other trusts. We are the direct beneficiaries. So we don't need to be a corporation to do that. And also these prepaid accounts, we are all the beneficiaries of those accounts.
Yes.
The Declaration of Independence is a trust, and we are
Yes.
the recipients of that trust. And it wasn't just, according to one of Winston's reports that we did, the Declaration of Independence wasn't only a trust for the United States, it was a trust for the world. It was what the intention was. Yeah.
Yeah.
They're not
Yeah.
they're not unalienable rights, they're unalienable rights. You're not supposed to be able to put a lien against us. and hold us in debtor's prison, you know, take our property from us, things of that nature.
Yeah.
Yeah, it all depends on
Yeah.
how you
Wow.
pronounce the word unalienable. What does that mean? Unalienable makes a lot more sense if you look at it as a trust. Okay,
Unalienable.
so
Yep.
yeah. Well, Tim, I think we need to close that. We're having such a great time. I know,
Yeah.
and it is so late
We're
here.
we're gonna we're gonna look at the Greta Thunberg issue and what that really is, but we'll have to leave that for another time. But yeah, that's another thing that's going on. But yeah, we're running out of time. I'm running out of battery.
Yeah,
You'll probably need to go to bed. We're running overtime.
yeah,
Otherwise, I could sit in the car and plug it in. But
I ran
and
out of espresso, keeping me up. I'm
and
gonna have my caffeine plunge pretty soon. Go ahead.
and just in the last 5 minutes, all these crimson rosellas have turned up here, which is like a red and green parrot.
Wow.
For those who are overseas, and it's a very attractive. It's bright red, and it's a bright red body parrot, and
Can you show
the
us, Tim?
wings are green. I can
Is
if
it
they
possible
won't
if you
fly
show?
away. I'll see how friendly they are, but I've got some up in the tree up here. If they'll let me go underneath them,
Well,
they're eyeing me off now.
be careful going under birds, Tim.
Can you see them there?
Oh yeah, but we can't really see the color, but we can see them.
Actually, it might be red and blue. I'm wrong about the green.
Because I think the sun is kind of, you know, you're facing the sun there, so it's a little hard to see the color. But
Yep,
yeah, we can
there
see
you
the
go.
birds up there. Just don't stand directly under them, Tim. Don't
isn't
smile.
that's isn't that a blessing?
I don't know, my friend. I wouldn't consider it one. Sky looks so
um,
blue there, so beautiful.
and what's been going on behind the scenes here while we've been talking that I kept noticing is someone in the town for the local council must be setting up all the Christmas decorations, because this ute kept coming and turning at this intersection near me with a fake reindeer, you know, with all the antlers. So that's going on. And then you have the old horse and cart ride that the tourists get on to get round in the old, you know, horse and cart thing. But
Wow,
yeah,
wait a minute. It just occurred to me, your Christmas is always in warm weather.
yeah. I mean, the idea of
Oh yeah,
snow
that's
in
wild.
at Christmas time is a bit weird to us, but it's not when you see um, the exposure to American TV. It's quite normal.
Oh wow,
Um,
that's so wild. Yeah, it's true.
yeah, we have a really hot day, and we eat the turkey, and it can usually be a really, really hot day, and then everyone feels like they eat too much, and then everyone wants to have an afternoon nap. It doesn't matter if you're a
Right.
12-year-old or a 50-year-old. Everyone sort of like goes, ugh.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Oh, that's funny. Well, thanks for sharing that with us, Tim. You're always in a new spot every time we do a report. You've always got some
And
interesting place to
can
share with us.
yep. Can someone please explain to me the significance in history, even at places like Machu Picchu, or even in old Roman Catholic buildings, of the three? There's always three windows, or there's sets of threes, and the one in the middle is
Right.
always higher. And you even have that in stuff to do with all the pyramids around the world.
Yes, you're
It's
right.
always the three. There's a three window, and
Well,
and even
isn't the 369 basis of the Fibonacci sequence a series? Is it the
oh,
relationship?
okay,
Isn't
yeah,
there's some relationship? Yeah, there's some
that sounds
relationship
right.
there. I'm not sure. I don't know why, but that's the basis of the 369, which is, well,
That makes sense.
it's a natural overtone series as well. So it's the Fibonacci sequence. Yeah. Which is
Yeah,
what Nikola Tesla says is the secret of the universe, is the mystery of the 369. And I'm sure it has something to do with the frequencies that are generated from that too, the vibration, right, Tim? Something to do with
yeah.
frequencies, has to have something to do with frequencies. If it has to do with Nikola Tesla, definitely.
Yeah.
Well, my friend, do you have any final comments you'd like to
Um,
wrap this up with down in Australia?
no, I think I've blown my own socks off today. Um, pretty much. Yeah, no, I'm sort of speechless. I feel like I feel sort of I feel cooked actually.
Yeah, you've been standing in the
I'm
sun the whole
mentally
time.
cooked. Oh
Oh,
yeah, not just cooked from the sun, and plus whatever the energies are coming from that, be them beneficial or detrimental on the
yeah.
physical level. I don't know, but yeah, I feel mentally cooked. So yeah, it's like been really good. Gonna
Well,
go
I
grab a
think,
coffee and
yeah, it's your morning. Exactly.
chill out by a lake or something for a
It's a,
little bit.
it's a little heavy for you in the morning, right? I would be for me.
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, that's it. Yeah, normally I'm more operational mentally of an evening because I'm set to be more like a night owl type
Yeah,
person.
right,
I get really creative when the sun goes down.
right.
Um, and so yeah, to actually get up and do this in the morning was a challenge, but I
Mm.
thought I'm not going to let that stop me. I actually had a fear that you'd be talking to me and I'd be like, I don't know what I think about that. And then you're like, oh god, Tim's just not doing this again in the mornings. You're just like not switched on.
Yeah,
But
I know. I'm not that great in the morning either. But you know what, Tim? It always happens that whatever messages we need to get out, they it always happens. I mean, I totally trust Tim and I are very connected. I mean, my guides guide me all the time.
oh,
My
yep.
my intuition, I'm referring to, and
I
Tim's
found a nest.
intuition. Oh, where'd you
Yep.
find that? Yeah, I saw
I
something
found
flying there.
the crimson rosella nest. There they are. See, I think they're nesting in there.
Oh, I see them. Yeah, they're red. Very nice. Now they're oh, look
Yeah,
at that. They're parrots. Yeah.
yeah, and
Very
I
nice.
think I don't know if there's a hole in the what's in there. I can't see up there. What's in that hole? Anything? Or
Hard to say. There's some broken
okay.
eggs. Broken eggs.
Ah, so it is a nest.
Yeah.
Broken eggs. So
Broken
something's
eggs.
broken them.
Some,
The poor
yes.
things.
Someone, well, he
They've
flew. He flew.
had their children destroyed.
No, I think the egg broke, when they hatched.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Looks like it. Well, thanks for sharing that. That's so awesome. Maybe you can
Mm.
get a picture of one of them and we can post it, on the report or something.
Yeah, I mean, I'd
Not,
probably
not,
find a
not at this
picture on a
moment.
really good one on Google. It's like
Oh,
the
yeah.
way to cheat is instead of take your own photo, just go on Google and get someone else's.
Well, that's okay. We could do that too. If you can't get one, hey, you got to do what you got to do. I think it would be nice. Our viewers would probably appreciate seeing that because it's so we don't just have parrots flying up to our windows here in the New York area. So it's
Yep.
something very interesting for us to see. Thanks for
Yes.
sharing that with us, Tim.
You're welcome.
Well, my friend, we will be back, another time. Hopefully, we'll have Steve join us from Austria. We usually have the three, countries and all, different parts of the world together talking.
Yeah.
But right now,
And
we're on complete opposite sides, Tim. So you can
yeah. And
pull
whatever
the
time works.
hemispheres.
If it's my daytime, I'll try and find a really nice spot because people seem to really like that. They always tell me.
Yes.
If not, I'll just be in my car or in a room somewhere, as we do.
Yeah.
So,
Sometimes we do
yeah, it
that too. Yeah. We.
was really nice talking to you. Yeah,
Thank you. Thank you. You as well, Tim. And I'm really glad we had a chance to do this again. And, thanks for being a trooper. And I know you probably could have used some more sleep, but I appreciate you getting up early. And, um, we sometimes I'm up at 5 o'clock or 4 o'clock to do some of these interviews too. So it is nice to, you know, just flip it around sometimes. We can't do it at night when I'm in the US at night because it's really 3 in the morning for Steve, so it's too late for him. But when we can flip it the other way, when it's your nighttime and it's our daytime, then Steve usually can join us. So that's how it has to work. And we're so used to that on the GoldFish Report, dealing with so many different time zones because we do interviews with people all over the world. So we get used to that, and I usually don't have a problem getting up at 4 o'clock to do an interview because that's how it is in the business,
yeah,
right? So, well,
yeah,
good to see you, Tim. And I hope the viewers comment, make some comments on some of the things we talked about and let us know how you feel about how the media is portraying President Trump. And do you think it's fair? And do you think, and he did talk about the social media giants controlling what people have access to, and information, what they can and can't see, and you know, really doing things that work against, you know, your brother and sister. So it's not nice. So it'd be great to see our viewers' comments. Now, Tim, you're going to have this on your channel, and we'll have it on GoldFish Report channel as well. So it'll be nice to see what how viewers respond to this. So I want
Yeah.
to thank everybody for viewing. Thank you for watching. And Tim, thanks again. It's been a very interesting
Yep.
report.
You too. I can't wait to do another one. And I'm sure there will be events, successive events imminently. As you know, I'm waiting. It's a very exciting time right now. I'm very optimistic. I feel like, you know, what am I going to see next time I get on here? And, you know, are we going to like see some exciting news come in? It just feels like the energies are really pushing stuff. And so I'm
Yeah.
expecting a lot to be going on right now. And I wouldn't be surprised if there were events in the next 24 to 48 hours that would give us 4 hours of new stuff to talk about
Yeah.
in regards to that. You know, just open up a whole new thing to process and address and look at. So
Well, it may happen. Like I said, I mean, if we fast forward a little bit, and once these FISA D-class and the IG D-class comes out, and of course this transcript, I mean, like I said, it might, everyone's going to be like, impeachment, what? You know, what was that about? Because this is going to blow everybody away. I mean, you know, it's going to expose the Democrats and the socialist fascists for what they are, the Nazis, you know, that infiltrated the government and have been here ever since they killed JFK. You know, it's like, it's going to expose all of that. But Tim, so I have a feeling we'll probably be doing this more often. So
yeah,
I think
yeah,
things are starting to happen, and I think energetically, Tim, it's supporting that. You know, I think when we see this kind of activity with the sun is probably responding. It's probably the symbiotic, you know, kind of effect with the sun and with the earth. You know, if that
yes.
Schumann frequency is representing all of us and the earth, there has to be some kind of interaction. I mean, something's going on. I don't understand the science of it because I haven't studied it, but if somebody does, please let us know.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And by the way, I've got the rest of this week off, and I'm probably going to take next week unless there's a responsibility at work with a upcoming project. So I'm thinking to even take next week off, and so I'm thinking I'm going to have plenty of time on my hands, and hence there's probably going to be a lot of videoing. And if you know, I won't be as restricted time-wise. So just keep that in mind.
Okay, Tim. And if that RV happens anytime between now and then, we'll have no more time restrictions, right?
I'm unattached to when and how it happens. It would be
I know.
nice right now, but if it doesn't happen until next year, that's okay. And if it comes in a different form to what all the different RV groups are talking about, because right now, I've got to tell you the truth. When I tap in and touch upon, because I don't look at any of these groups, but when I, you know, all this communication happening in all these groups about the RV and 800 numbers, I feel like these energy waves, this Schumann resonance is just shifting me so much that I'm not interested in that anymore. It seems like it's stuck. It feels like these groups are stuck in a certain mindset that it's going to happen this way or that way in a certain way. What if it's a different way completely?
Yeah.
And
True.
everyone's sort of been taken for a side ride. It's still real, but what if everyone's on a side ride to how it actually manifests into our civilization and society? I really don't know the truth of this. I'm just speculating, but something inside me makes me feel like I'm just not interested in following certain. I will report them if there's updates on the RV. I will report them because they're optimistic and sharing that, oh, there's, you know, this movement. But at the same time, I just find people communicate with me on Messenger and there's a bit of contempt. So who are you? Who are you posting this stuff? You're not in any real groups. So, you know, what are you legitimate? Or, you know, it's like
Oh,
people feel like they've got to be in a club.
Don't you have a
It's like
direct
there's all
contact
these
with the bank?
clubs.
Don't you have a direct contact with a banker?
Apparently, but yeah, it's like everyone's there's a feeling of being in a club, and it's like an exclusive club, and there's like 6 or 7 different clubs, and you're either in that club, or you're
Yeah.
dancing around the different clubs, and it's like the whole energy around it. Sometimes the people in it or the people running it, I'm picking up that they're not, their vibration doesn't feel like it's in the right place. So I'm starting to get skeptical about how this is actually going to happen, and how and when and everything. And I mean, I'm happy however it happens. I'm not attached. I'm not trying to pass judgment here. I'm just trying to work out, without getting myself inside something that takes you for a ride, where you buy into it that much that you forget to look up and see everything else that's going on. Because I need to see everything that's going on. I can't just buy one train of thought and go blind to everything else. And that's really, really important in this time. You've got to try and see the bigger picture. And so I won't get dragged into getting caught up too much in one perspective on how the RV is going to come out, you know.
Yeah, it's
You
a
know,
good idea. It's our
if I'm wrong,
expectation.
let me know. But yeah,
No, I understand. And, you know, it's,
people are attached. They're attached. People are energetically attached to an outcome or a
yeah,
certain way. And
right.
it's all sitting in left brain material, like it's going to happen like this. Here's the instructions. It's like this, then this, then this, then this. And then
So,
everyone's so focused in on that they're forgetting to you know what I'm saying?
yeah, it's
Yeah.
11 o'clock.
Oh,
Oh, Tim, it's 11:11. We have to end.
awesome.
It's 11:11 here in New
Okay.
York area. So this is the
Yep.
time. So, you know, having said that, what an interesting time it is, isn't it? 11:11,
Yep.
my friend.
It
So
is.
the message is right. We got the message right again. So, folks, we don't even want to end this, do we, Tim? We got to stop talking. So we got to
Oh,
go. We got to go.
yeah.
We'll be
Now
back
I'm
soon,
getting a
folks.
headache. So
I know. We'll be back soon, folks. We'll continue this
yep.
conversation. We'll have more to say. We'll hopefully have Steve join us, and we'll have an interesting conversation from around the world.
Come
So
on,
thank you
Steve.
for viewing. Yeah, thank you for
I
viewing.
miss his charismatic voice. He's got a very charismatic Australian accent.
You know, and
I love
because
it.
he's from Melbourne, you know, he always feels nostalgic when he talks to you because it reminds him of home. So he enjoys talking to you too. So thanks to everybody for watching. Tim, thanks for joining us. I'll speak to you soon, Tim. And
You're
I hope
welcome.
everyone has a great week, a great weekend, and just be prepared for who knows what might be coming. So
Yes.
having said that, this concludes this edition of the GoldFish Report. Thanks for viewing.